called Trust the Process, along with one of our CES students who I will allow to introduce herself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Giovanna Gaines. I am a doctoral student in the CES program online, and I am here joining Dr. Rush Wilson for Trust the Process. I've enjoyed many times.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy it. So what we're going to do is really just give you an overview of what Trust the Process is and have kind of a brief little Trust the Process session with you here. So before we get started, and in the chat, let me know, or just, shout it out. Are you familiar with what Trust the Process is? Look at the chat. Okay. So anybody, do you know what it is? Nope. Lots of you don't. Okay, cool. So Trust the Process, let me close the chat so I can see, is, you don't have to read all of this, but what we do is on Saturday mornings, we have guest speakers come into, well, one Saturday morning a month. It's usually the first Saturday, not always the first Saturday, because it conflicts sometimes with the calendar if we aren't in school or if it's winter holidays or something like that. But usually it's the first Saturday of the month. And we have people come in as guest speakers and talk about a topic that is of interest with the students who come and with people from the community. So it's not only limited to Chicago school students. And they talk about whatever topic and we discuss it like a conversation. We can bring in questions, we can bring in ideas and just go through the process of developing our professional understandings of whatever it is we are discussing. So I do want you to have some idea about the types of things we've talked about. And Giovanna, if you want to add on as I'm speaking, please feel free to do so. But we started out with talking about mental health clinicians in the prison system. So we had someone come in from the prison system who works as a corrections counselor and talk about what that experience is like for them as a counselor, in corrections, hearing different people's stories, what that's like, gave some advice to some students who are interested in doing that same kind of work. Talked about what parts of it are fulfilling, what parts are scary, what parts are difficult, and how long this person had been in that position. This particular speaker started off in law enforcement as a police officer and then went to graduate school for counseling and then kind of morphed those two things together. We also had a very, very powerful speaker come in and talk about interpersonal violence. This person is now a public speaker. This person is a minister, but they were in a domestic violence situation in their marriage, their previous marriage, where her ex-husband came in and into the home and took the life of both her parents and attempted to take hers, as she was very seriously injured. So now she goes and speaks to various groups about what that experience was like for her, what signs and things you need to be aware of, what the warning signs are, and how her life has continued and how she uses the ministry to help both educate other people and to heal. Case processing. I laugh a little bit because, Javon, I know you were there at this one and you said it was traumatizing to you. But we had a person come in, a professional, who talked about a case, and it was a very interesting case.
That I'm, by the way, still traumatized by, guys. So make sure when you come to Trust the Process, have everything that you might need on a normal basis for your clients, ready for yourself as a clinician, because you might get some things and hear some things that you just wasn't ready for. So I would love to share this one because this one is still traumatizing me, if that's okay. This particular one was our basic clinical work, where a clinician gets a call, client calls up, and the conversation goes, hey, I'm on the road, I'm a truck driver, and I've just got through killing, someone, and I'm ready to do it again. Imagine that, like being able as a clinician to have to process that you just got a call from someone that is seeking clinical work, and this is psychopathology, and you're on the other side of the phone, and you have a duty to warn, you have responsibility to the field. Like, what do you do in this case? So yes, I would have to say, if I were to explain this particular trust the process, it was real life. And I had to have some some clinical work for myself afterwards, but very informative. I'm joking, but very informative.
It was informative. And the other piece I'd like to share is this particular clinician she had a very difficult time because this happened on a Sunday evening. So even when she made attempts to consult, there were many places that weren't open. So it was challenging. So if you're interested in that one, all of these recordings are still available. We had a graduate student and I co-presented on managing stress. We had an outside speaker come in and talk about sex in the session, which seemed to be pretty well received. And
that one was fun.
Yeah, she did a good job. That was fun. And just different things that are related to sex, not just sexual intercourse, but sexuality, sexual attraction, gender, sex identity, just lots of different aspects of everything that falls under the umbrella of sex. Working with athletes and high profile clients we've done. Working with clients at the intersection of body image and eating and identity. And I did that one along with someone from the Academy for Eating Disorders. We have immigration and counseling. We did that as a 2-part series. And then also the last one we did was Ukraine and Russia, understanding how the conflict relates to mental health. And then we actually had someone who works with lots of different types of immigrants for the government come in and speak to that. And we also had one of our students who is from Ukraine talk about their experiences too, given all the things that are going on right now in Ukraine. So these are the types of things that we've discussed in Trust the Process. All of the recordings for these are available. And we talked about who these people were who came in and spoke to us. And I do try really hard to have a guest speaker come in, because having that type of diversity and work experience seems to be very helpful to the students who come and join us. And again, Trust the Process is voluntary. It's not anything that you have to do, but we certainly do encourage you to log in and just kind of listen. Some people come in with their cameras off. Usually by the end, people have their cameras on. It's fun. It's talking back and forth. It's having you be actively engaged in whatever it is we are discussing. And we got a couple of future topics here before we roll into talking a little bit to you. So we're going to talk a little bit about advocacy and counseling, and that would have been this month, but it conflicted with the calendar. So hopefully we'll be able to do that person's presentation in June. And that one will be done by a woman named Dr. Victoria Kress, who is really, really active in the counseling field. We will look at self-harm and self-injurious behavior. Legal issues and court testimony with counselors that Dr. Moore from our department will do, because that's an area of expertise for her. We'll look at substance use. We'll look at work-life balance. We'll look at forgiveness. And then if there are other topics that someone would like to discuss, we absolutely welcome those to be a part of our series. So just send an email or let us know that that's what you're interested in learning more about. I think I talked a little bit about that. We have guest speakers, grad students, CMHC and CES students, along with me, Dr. Liu and Dr. Moore. We host and moderate these very casual and informal discussions. We want to talk, we want to generate ideas, we want to share experiences, we want to talk about why this is an interest for us. We want to talk about things that are heavy. I noted that we meet on one Saturday afternoon each month, and the recordings are available. So all that stuff in mind, and we actually can talk a little bit about, before we go into this mini session with you today, some of the ways in which these topics become what we will discuss in future Trust the Process meetings. So for instance, we had 3, I believe, mass shootings over the weekend, but the first of the 3 really hit home for me for multiple reasons. One is that this person who killed 10 people targeted Black people, African-American people. Another is that it happened an hour away from where I'm sitting right now. So to have driven down to Buffalo and go to that tops as close as you can get to it, and just kind of sense the energy and see the people and people praying and laying flowers and doing all that kind of stuff. That was pretty heavy for me. And it kind of in some ways contribute to what I will bring into this discussion about emotional safety. Giovanna's going to lead this largely. But we have a lot of stuff that happens to us as counselors, or a lot of things we experience as counselors, or people who are in counseling related fields or education. And those things can necessarily influence the way in which we engage our work, our clients, the people around us. So what I would like to invite you to do is to actually turn your cameras on, for those of you who are willing. And then we're going to have a conversation a little bit about emotional safety, what inspires things, what emotional safety means, and just kind of go from there. So if you're comfortable turning on your camera, we'd like to talk a little bit about this with you and have you engage. We need this to be more interactive.
And just to piggyback off of what Dr. Rush mentioned before, is that this is the moment for you to get the opportunity to kind of experience what we do and trust the process. So we're going to just start out. The questions are already here for you guys so that you can just kind of get your thoughts going. What does emotional safety mean for you? And anybody that feels the need to chime in, no order, just, what does emotional safety mean to you?
And Leah, if you're driving, don't feel like you need to turn on your camera. We don't want you to do that. You don't have to turn on your camera if you're moving.
Oh, I'm not driving. I'm sitting in an endless car line at school pickup.
Oh, I sympathize. I've certainly been there.
That'll be me in an hour, Leah.
Yeah.
So emotional safety, and I'll let you lead this. You don't have to raise your hand. Just go ahead and jump in and speak.
Chime in.
So I'll start. My name is Chandra, and I'm one of the PhD students getting ready to come on my year with Chicago School. And emotional safety to me means making sure that you are in a safe emotional place yourself, especially before working, before you begin working with clients, and then consistently doing check-ins with yourself. To make sure that you're in a good space. If I can, be personal, for instance, for me, I recently, like within the last few weeks, had a nephew that was murdered.
Sorry.
And so in dealing with that and then, coming in and working with patients, I always have to make sure that I'm in a good space. Because I don't want to put anything off or not give my patients the best of what they can from me.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, and I extend my condolences to you and to your family. Thank you, Chandra. And one of the things that was mentioned, and Giovanna, you may bring this up too, is the idea of self check-ins.
Yeah, self-care, and I also send my condolences as well, Sandra. And what I hear you saying is it's self-awareness, and that's exactly one of the components. Anyone else feel free to chime in and add something additional to how you may define or how you see emotional safety?
For me,
Hi, Mary.
yes. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in Downers Grove, Illinois. And I did theater for years. And one of the things you learn in theater is when you go on the stage, you leave your troubles or whatever's going on in your life off stage. And it's been so helpful for me with doing therapy. And my husband died at the end of August last year. And I'm going to have a celebration of life at the end of August this year. And it was very important for me to continue to work. So I had to make sure that I left my stuff off the stage, so to speak, as I was with the clients. So that's and besides doing my own work on, dealing with my grief on my own and in other ways.
Thank you for sharing that, Mary. And I appreciate that. And that kind of hit home because I too am in still, I like to think that counseling is my purpose, but acting is my passion. And I really
Yes.
do see how the two can fuse together. And I've too heard that. I'm actually filming in Mississippi next week for about a week at the same time, working on my doctoral. And at the same time, going through my own grieving process because I lost my grandmother not too long ago. And I found that acting was actually something that helped me to continue, you know, as well as celebrating the life and the legacy of my grandmother. So my hat and my heart goes out to you, and I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
for
And
sharing
to
that.
you.
But what I hear you saying, we first talked about self-awareness. I hear you saying self-regulation, being able to
Yes.
regulate your own emotions and be able to work through some of these difficult things that no matter if you're a clinician or not, we work through these things with our clients, but we also have to work through these things ourselves and
Right.
maintain the balance of everything that goes on around us in life. Still
Yes.
being parents, still, you know, marriage, working, all of these different variables that we
Right.
must be able to balance and maintain when we go through traumatizing or difficult times in life. So self-regulation.
Yes, and the other part I'll add is that in theater, you have to focus and concentrate on the person opposite you, the actor opposite you, which was also good preparation for focusing and concentrating and being there for the person on the other side of the room in a therapy situation.
Mary, I have,
So-
I'd like to first extend my condolences to you as well. And
Well, thank you, and to you also.
And I have one follow-up question for you. You talked about acting preparing you to leave your personal stuff where you need to leave it to go into this professional situation. Does it work in the reverse? Are you able to leave what is at work
Oh.
so that you can go back and enter into your own life?
You know, most of the time, it's interesting that you would ask that question. Tiffany, is it?
Yep.
I can't see where without my glasses. Thank you.
Yes, Tiffany.
Yeah, because yesterday I did 6 workshops in a row, and then I had a couple. And usually this couple it goes fine with, but it was exhausting. And we went longer than usual. And I went to bed last night and I couldn't get them out of my mind. That's not the norm for me, but I kept thinking, what else could I have done? Should I have done this? And I don't normally I'm able to leave it off stage or in the room, so to speak, when I go out of the room. But there are times, and last night was one of them, when I was not able to do that. Yeah, but most of the time I am. So that's the good news.
Yes. Yeah, that is good news. Thank you.
Yeah,
for
because if I
sharing.
weren't able to do that on a regular basis, I probably couldn't do the work because I'd be carrying everybody with me.
Yes. And that would be overwhelming.
It would be.
Absolutely.
And what I did, I don't know if this is helpful. What I did, I couldn't sleep. So I got up and I journaled about it. And that helped. And I know a friend of mine, we do supervision with each other. And I know I'm going to do that on Monday and I'll talk to him about it. But so there's other outlets for it. But at that moment, I couldn't let it go, you know?
Yes, I do. I relate. Joy, your hands up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I said,
hi.
no, Joy. Yes,
Oh.
thank you.
Yeah. I'll chime in from more of I'm a new student, and not in the PhD program. So I'll chime in from a non-practitioner, more of the client side of things. For me,
Sure.
what my definition is.
Mhm.
I know I feel emotionally safe with a counselor or with people in my life when it's kind of, for lack of a better term, this unconditional reception. And so for me, it means, to go to the third bullet point, it's the kind of the opposite of regulation. I don't have to necessarily regulate my emotions or water them down, so to speak. Just from the client side, or the other side. I know I'll learn more about how to have to control my empathy or empathic reactions and sensations as I go through the program, I hope. But anyway, that's my 2 cents from the other side.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Go ahead, Giovanna.
Michael, I see you. I see your hand in the corner there.
Responding? Sure.
I'm a
Okay.
fan of emojis.
All right. Can you hear me and see me?
We can. Thumbs up.
Wow, this has been an incredible couple of years. I'll be 78 in September, and
September, baby.
right, September 11th, believe it or not. Anyway, the world. So now I'm no longer teaching at the Chicago school, and I'm no longer, I have a small private practice, but the world is so different. The things that I've expected, people valuing knowledge, and I'm just so frustrated. I found myself not watching MSNBC as much, and I'm finding that I'm so discouraged about things that it's very hard to do that thing and be to absent myself from all of that stuff and actually be on stage with my clients. I found, though, a very interesting tool that is helping me.
Okay.
Although I taught at the Chicago school, I got my doctorate at the California School of Professional Psychology. And my favorite instructor there, who was dean of the campus at the time, I had referred a close friend to him for therapy. And he let me know that my teacher has on YouTube, he's been doing weekly lectures about himself, about changes in psychology and what he's, and he incorporates his personal life, professional life, and psychology. And so I've been watching Arthur one day a week, every 1 hour of Arthur every day. And it's brought back to me the passion. He's such a great storyteller, and the passion that brought me into the field. And that's helping me remove myself from so much of what's going on politically, and because the politics has just permeated everything. I'm having a hard time with this particular stage of my development. And so it helps to connect with people like that. I don't know, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. So, and you're right on point. One of the stages, or one of the concepts of emotional safety, what I hear you say is socially aware, social awareness. And it sounds that as if you found a tool to put in your toolbox that, we tend to collect over time as clinicians, that is now helping you as you go through this stage of what the world has become. I'm for certain that we can all say that after COVID, that life is different as we know it. So with that being said, you found something that is good for you in terms of being able to cope, and that's satisfying for you, and to be able to make sense of the world as we know it and the things that are going on around you. So social awareness is another characteristic of being emotionally safe. And I feel like socialization is that piece that's important for all of us, that sense of belonging, right? Does anyone else want to chime in to what emotional safety
Before we
means
move
for
on,
them?
I want to follow up a little bit with Jody,
Sure.
with the comment that was made about not being a clinician, being a grad student. And I'm wondering, how does that impact your sense of emotional safety and connectedness to the field you're entering?
Oh, nice.
Well, I guess you guys are using the term that's in a way that's new to me. So I'm just kind of getting more clarification, because for me, when I talk to my kids and say, it's a safe space, this is a safe space, we're not going to use these words. So that's how, I'm just kind of listening and learning from you guys. I don't really know how that will impact me. I do know, like a lot of us, that I'm sponge, so I know that I have to have a plan in place, or a checklist, or something, a process or self-care, whatever it is that is recommended to remain safe, to keep my mental health safe during
Yes.
counseling. Is that right? Do I have my
Yes.
kind of on to, okay.
I would say so. And one of the things that I also would encourage you to consider, and this I'm sure was asked of you in the admissions interview itself, is, when we talk about self-care and how do we keep ourselves healthy and safe and maintain our boundaries between what we will experience in our careers versus what we'll experience in our lives. It's important to keep that in mind as well, and figure out, how will I not bring these things that are presented to me in textbooks, in client sessions, in news reports, and whatever, into myself so much so that I start to lose me. I've known people who certainly have experienced pretty strong degrees of burnout because there wasn't enough of a balance for them to feed into other areas of their lives, their families, their friends, their activities, their whatever it is that works for them. So I hope that helps a little bit. I don't want you to think that this field is going to be, rough, but there are some instances, of course, that are difficult, in certain situations that we face globally that can be challenging. COVID has been pretty challenging clinically. So I hope that helps.
Yeah,
I appreciate the thumbs up. Okay, sorry, Giovanni.
Sorry, can I chat
Sure.
real quick?
Absolutely.
So to that point, I actually had a really interesting interview today, and I'm going to go really quick because there's about to be a kid in the car. But one of the ways they protect their clinicians from burnout is they have a mandatory week off every other month. With COVID doing telehealth and the Zoom burnout, they literally make them take a week off from patient practice, except for, if they have a patient in crisis or things like that, to do whatever they love, whether it's gardening or journaling or sleeping or whatever it is, a week off every month just to sort of recharge. And I thought that was unusual, but really healthy.
That's beautiful. That's great. Wow.
I'm muted. I'm sitting here typing so that I can put all of the points in the chat. And I'm saying, what company is this? I want to work there. I need a break once a month, every month.
Is that
for
with
an
pay? Is that
It's a
with
movie.
pay?
It's a movie studio, so I think they have the bandwidth and budget.
Oh.
Nice. I'm not even sure how to follow up. Okay, thank you for sharing that. But it also brings to mind something that we probably should consider: emotional safety. We are in a culture in North America, probably broadly, but in the US, where we are encouraged to work and work and work and work and work and work, and taking time off. One of my clients told me the other day that taking time off was lazy. And that stuck with me, because that's not laziness, but I know where it comes from, I believe, for this person. When we aren't encouraged to take time for ourselves and to allow ourselves to revitalize our energy, how can we be safe? If we have a culture that doesn't promote safety, how can we be safe?
I'm going to go ahead and say that we cannot be safe, because self-care is essential, especially for self-care is essential for everyone. And one of the things that I always like to kind of advocate for is for children as well. I feel like sometimes adults feel like, oh, we need a break. So do children, because we understand that children can also deal with depression. I just share that to simply say that in order to be emotionally safe, you have to be holistic, and you have to be realistic, mindful, and intentional. So if we're going to say that self-care is essential, then we have to do what it takes to get what it is that we need. And while that might look different from one person to the next, it is important that we do so. And so I really do appreciate you sharing that. I think I'm going to try to find a job at that company, because I really would like to work somewhere where I get a whole week off once a month, every month to do whatever it is that I love to do.
You know what? Justina made a comment that I think is really interesting in the chat. And she wrote, after graduating from the CMHC program, so she is our alumna, I realized that true self-care is not about using bubble baths, but more about self-reflection, being willing to learn and grow, and knowing when you're not 100% and ensuring that you are before working with clients. That's a great point. Because in no way, shape, or form, and I don't think she's doing this either, are we knocking the bubble bath idea. It's great to do those types of things too. Sometimes there's more that we have to consider as we take care of ourselves.
You know, I'm
go
sorry, did it?
No, please.
Two thoughts came to mind. Jane Fonda wrote a book a number of years ago. And in it, she said she had to learn how at the end of the day to say, I've done enough. Because she was a perfectionist. And that always stuck with me, to be able to say, I've done enough and there's tomorrow. And then the other thought I had was, and I just said it to a client the other day, because he's a workaholic. And I said, you know, when you were in grade school, didn't they give you playtime, you know, recess? I said, we all need recess. And, you know, and we need it throughout the day, you know, not just pushing until you're exhausted. And that was another thought. And then one other thought I had was, there's a store here that I took some things to get rid of, and they have used books. And this book is stress. They're puzzle. It says stress relief or something like, and it's what they are words, and you have to find the words in the puzzle. And so it takes your focus, and you don't have to think about anything else other than finding these words in the puzzle. And they're in all different shapes and that, so it takes a little time to do. But I think all of us need to find something where we can also reflect, I agree with, but also be mindless.
Yes.
And I think, and I go back to the gentleman at the bottom there, he said about MSNBC and that. And I have to limit how much I watch the news, because I can get so caught up in it. And like with Ukraine, the situation there, I start crying and empathizing with those people over there and getting upset myself. So I have to monitor how much I watch that kind of news.
Yes.
So it's being vigilant.
And even there's some challenges with that, because what you said made 100% sense. And when I've talked to some people, and I even said I went to Buffalo to that grocery store just to kind of be there and pay respects. But there's this interesting conflict between, if I tune out, am I uninformed? If I don't know what's going on, will I be safe? And if I know what's going on, am I now unsafe? And there's this weird kind of Mobius strip that sometimes happens for people. And you don't know how to get off that strange train because it never stops.
Right. And when you look at the news, especially if you're in the Chicago area, it seems like it's bad news every day with somebody getting shot. So it's like I have to balance what I watch. And then I love old movies. So I'll balance it with losing myself in Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, or, you know, whatever that entertains me and helps me escape. So it's the balance.
I love that you shared that, Mary. I'm actually started out at the Chicago School from Chicago, and because of that same crime that you're speaking of, I moved to Florida in November. I was over the trauma as a clinician myself with a practice. I actually have a small private practice in Illinois. I'm from Chicago, born and raised, but I was over the everyday trauma. And I also took the time, and this is what I meant by being intentional, vigilant, intentional, synonymous, as a clinician for myself, taking care of myself and self-regulation, regulating my own emotions. As a mom of 4, I could no longer stomach going through certain neighborhoods and my ring bell going off saying there was a shooting here, there was a shooting there, wondering if today is going to be the day that I will be a casualty of unnecessary, senseless crime. And so again, when you're talking about being intentional and your own care and getting what you need, now maybe someone else didn't need to go thousands of miles away, but for my peace, my sanity, and the safety of myself and my children and my family, I did. I made a move, and now at night in my neighborhood, I can hear a pin drop by 7 p.m. I love it. And I'm unapologetic about the decision that I made for my self-care. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. This is good stuff. And this is what Trust the Process is. Once a month, every month on a Saturday. It's informal, it's life-changing, it's fun, it's invigorating. So guys, please don't hesitate to go watch the past ones and join us for the next one as we move forward. Dr. Rush?
Mhm.
And when
So
when is it again? It's Saturday, and what's,
It's
how do you-
normally the first Saturday of the month at noon Eastern, 11 Central. And the only time we don't do it then is when it conflicts with the schedule. So if students are not having classes that week, we don't do it. So I don't want you to have to come back in if you're not supposed to be here that week. So we'll just wait till the next month. But otherwise, it's the first Saturday of the month.
and you do it by Zoom?
We do it by Zoom.
And how do I get to it?
You know what? I can put,
How do we get to it?
it is the same Zoom address all the time, but it's not this one right here. If you wait until the end, when we wrap up, I'll give you the address because
Okay.
it won't change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's also in Canvas. What is the
For-
forum, Dr. Rush?
For people can access it when you're Chicago, when you have access to the Chicago School platform, it's in Canvas. But if you don't, it's always the same one. I can start extending the invitation to external. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Colleen. So rolling back into what we were talking about, now we'll make sure we have the address posted by the end. I just have to change my screen settings a little bit in a second. The other piece that I really hope is important for us to consider is these conversations, discussions, these thoughts, these things we're talking about here are the things that bleed into our work when we are doing research, when we're doing clinical work, when we're teaching. So if we are not aware of who we are and where we stand with stuff, it's really hard to go into these professional settings and be present and be genuine with our clients, with our research participants, with our students. Any thoughts come up for anybody with that? You guys are kind of quiet.
I'm sorry, could you summarize once again what you just said?
Yeah, if
Or
we're
what the
not,
question is?
yeah, if we're not checked into where we are, how does that affect our work?
I'm a strong believer in therapy for oneself as a therapist. I just believe if we're going to do the work, we have to stay a step or two ahead of the client. And I don't know of a human being that doesn't have things they could deal with. And that's just something I've done all my adult life. I just found it very useful, very important. So, yeah.
You ever had a situation where you did let your personal stuff bleed, or you fought to keep your personal stuff out, even if it didn't actually bleed into what the client may have perceived? Because I certainly have.
Have I fought with myself not to bring my personal things into the session?
Or not to let your personal things, whatever they are, influence the session.
I think the one thing I've done is I always want to check in with myself if I want to share something personal with someone to make sure it's not about me and it's not for me. I want to make sure it's truly something I need to say that will be helpful for you.
Yes.
So I do check myself on that. As far as did I let something bleed into the session? Probably, not intentional. But with hindsight, as I look back, so I try to check myself on that too, because I don't want that to be the case.
I once had a session where I had to have a rubber band on my wrist. And every time I started to say this one particular thing, I had to pop myself. Because I knew this particular client was going to say something that triggered something that was very parallel in my life, but I didn't have a way to cancel that session, which probably would have been the best option for that person that week and for me as well. So that was much more of a letting this person talk and process and lots of reflection and feeling, because I couldn't be as present as I wanted to be because there was this part of my own life that was consistently tapping me on my shoulder saying, can I get in? And the answer is no, there's no space for you. This is not about you. That was challenging. And I think it's important for us to not only reflect on that, but to make sure people coming into the field like you, Joy, even though I don't want to pick on you, but you said you were new, so that people know that these things happen. We are human. We are still people. Things roll up in our lives like they do our clients' lives. And it's really important to be able to have a handle on where we are.
And if I may add one more thing, and I don't mean to monopolize, but I think this might be helpful, is I had a client years ago that I saw for a long time, but when he would come in, he'd want to talk about his political views, which were so extreme.
Mhm.
It was very difficult for me.
Mhm.
And I had a very challenging time trying to figure out how I navigate that, because it was so polar opposite of where I was.
What did you do?
Pardon me?
What did you do?
Well, at one point I ended up telling him, I didn't get into my politics with him, but he knew that I was not where he was at.
Mhm.
And I just said to him, I think it'd be best if we discuss other issues. And I think there would have been somebody better for him if he wanted to continue down that path than me.
Did he?
I haven't seen him since I said that.
That would be an interesting conversation to have and trust the process too. What happens when you have to terminate with a client because it really is just in the best interest of everyone involved?
Right.
Or
But
some places call that
it was
firing.
really getting a reaction out of me internally, not that I was expressing it,
Mhm.
but internally, I just felt myself wanting to speak, but just kept my mouth shut about it.
That's interesting. And was that one who could potentially be a client you thought about once you got home? And I posted the
Yes,
link,
I would
right?
think about him. I still do think about him. I wonder how he's doing and so forth.
Mhm.
And he wasn't, at the end, he wasn't a regular client anymore, but he would always check in with me every so many months or even 6 months or a year.
Mhm.
But this year, when the end of the year came, I realized he didn't call this year.
Interesting. So I did post the address in the chat for you as well too. One of the things I hope that you can see is what we'll do with Trust the Process is we often have a guest speaker. It's that guest speaker usually has some structured material they present at the beginning, and then we spend the rest of the time processing through it. What is this like? How will this impact us? What are you thinking? And how do we get some of those thoughts and feelings that we have about this issue out so that we can move forward with our lives without this necessarily clogging us up when we're working in our professional settings or just living our daily lives. So I hope this has been helpful for all of you. Are there any things you'd like to say to Javon? The flip side.
I think I pretty much said what I felt, which is to make sure everyone understands that it's never one way and trust the process. You know, some days are absolutely fun and comical and laughter, but then there are also moments where you can, as a clinician, be triggered. Your own things can come up. It's informal, it's life-changing, it's educational. If I were to sum it down to one word, I would definitely say invigorating. And there's never been a moment where I've attended Trust the Process and I didn't take something away from either my personal life or myself as a clinician. And it just really works because what I love about it is that it's real, authentic, and raw. And so that's what you guys were able to see today. You know, we bring our stuff here and we're able to process it and trust that we're processing it.
Before we leave, I'd like to acknowledge Joey talked about there's a flip side. She had a counselor ghost her after the session. He left for lunch just as I was getting back into my car, saw my bumper stickers, and that was, I guess, the end of that. So while you're able to look at it, Joey, and say the lemonade and those lemons is that I was able to see this wasn't a good fit, it's still really, really unprofessional. It's just interesting. All right.
Yeah, I thought I might at least get a very brief, terse email, but nothing.
How interesting is that? All right. So anyway, because I could open a whole door and start a whole conversation with that, I hope that you are willing to come and join us on the first Saturday of the month, which I guess would be June. I think that's an okay Saturday. And there are invitations kind of sent out through Canvas. You can also email me. I can put my email in the chat in case you'd like to, if you're not in the system, contact me.
So would that be June
go from there.
4th?
I think so. I'm going to check the calendar and make sure it doesn't conflict with anything. Oh,
And if you guys.
and we
if
also
you-
have the address there in CMC. There's another email that can be used. Thank you.
You know what, Dr. Rush, I just thought about something. Is there a way, since we can share it, this just came to mind, I don't know why I never thought about this, just like the Chicago School shares some of the different presentations that others do on YouTube, is there a way that we could probably trust the process for those who are not students? Because of course, students have the access to see the old ones from Canvas, but what about people who might want to, you know, chime in that aren't Chicago School students? If we could probably find a way to move them on to the Chicago School YouTube platform. That's something to think about or maybe look into.
It is. And then Joey's given us some suggestions too about where people can connect also. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I know that we're out of time, so I don't want to run over too much, but yeah. I thank you so much for, yes, we have our own YouTube channel. The answer is right there. We just haven't had a chance to upload these. So there's your answer to that one. Thank you all for your time and for coming to listen to us. And I hope to see you on a Saturday morning.